Joining me now, my guest at this time, you know him from Jean-Claude Van Johnson. You know him from seeing his smiling face so many other times. And you'll catch him this season on AMC's The Terror, Christopher Naoki Lee. Chris, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Chaz. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. Thanks for asking. It's so good to reconnect with you again. We're both fellow NY unicorns, also doing Coastal Dominance in our class of 2008. And
That's
now...
right.
And you're doing some fantastic things right now. Let's jump into it. AMC The Terror Season 2. I caught the pilot, and it's really tremendous. For those, it looks so pretty and so beautiful, and it's about something so ghastly. It's just such a great best of both worlds, which AMC is kind of known for presenting. And just it's hard to draw comparisons with things, even because it's a serial series. So to the best of my knowledge, there's no real, or at least as of yet that we've seen, connection to the first season wholeheartedly. How did you get involved with The Terror Season 2?
Yeah, just to go back to that first point too of how beautiful it looks. Credit to the DP John Conroy and just Ridley Scott, who executive produced this with AMC. Like they know how to kind of put the pieces together to, especially to make it look so good for what it does, and the actual material itself, the subject matter is so obviously very close to home for myself as a Japanese American, but just kind of that perfect blend of nonfiction with fiction, with the whole kind of Japanese folklore horror that kind of adds into this great effect. So you get a great sense of, if you want a piece of horror or if you want a piece of historical context and kind of learn more about World War II and the Japanese American internment camps, I think it does tremendously well when it comes to that. To answer that question of how I got involved, I actually got involved very early on last year in August, almost about a year ago, and I had read for a different part, and unfortunately that part didn't go through, but then kind of about a month or so, 2 months down the line, I got a call from casting essentially saying that they wanted to offer me this other part. So didn't even have to jump through the hoops, didn't have to do any of that stuff, but they kind of had seen what they wanted to see in the initial reads, and they said, hey, we want to offer this part to you. It's a kind of like a 4-episode arc for this 10-episode limited series. And so without me even knowing anything about the role whatsoever, I jumped on because I loved the pilot. I read it. I wanted to be very much a part of it. I knew what it meant for not only myself, but even just for artists who are perhaps not as represented in the business as much either. So it was something, it was a win-win no matter what. So I just jumped right in.
Excellent. Yeah, the way the script is handled in dealing with the Japanese internment camps and this terror, this thing that's happening around the Japanese communities in California and on the island in 1941. Just the way that it's handled is, I just think, completely stellar. So as a Japanese American actor, when you find out that certain stories and certain subject matters are being covered in a script like that, which frankly it doesn't get doesn't get covered that much, like this particular era of American history, right, whether fiction or nonfiction. Right. So when you see the subject matter like that being dealt with, what to you, or even particularly with the pilot or just in general, sticks out as the best way for something like that to be handled versus something potentially being exploitation?
Great question. It's always a fine balance. I think whenever you're dealing with something that is such a hot topic, and it's obviously so timely right now, so relevant right now. And so, even as the showrunner Alexander Wu said, it's not too difficult to draw the line of the comparison of what we kind of see in the real world versus what we're seeing through this artistic expression. And, obviously art in it of itself is one of those things where art does often imitate life. So, I think, especially with executive producers with Tony Toast and Sharon Goff, these three people really took the time to make sure that they gave it the right balance of not only the horror elements, but to honor truly what was going on of that time, because it is, a blemish sort of on kind of our country at the end of the day, where it isn't necessarily talked about nearly as much, but we obviously don't want to make it heavy-handed either. But it is one of those things where I think we live in a day and age now where I don't think you can necessarily separate the two as often when we have such great genre blended shows these days, like Chernobyl or When They See Us, or different shows that at least highlight kind of things that have happened in the real world, mixed with however fictional elements might be added from there.
Sweet. Cool. Yeah. Because it really, just along with like the mise en scène of just like how it looks, there's just such a realness to it, and like within like the horror element of it, and just to see it, especially without spoiling anyway for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, because currently the pilot and the first season thus far is available like on the on demand to watch, and just in particular in that first episode, the exact sort of moment in time that you see that certain shift, it's just really well done.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I mean, I think if anyone's a fan of horror, especially kind of Japanese horror, where we were sort of instrumental in bringing a lot of the kind of horror elements to the States, early on from the 90s and 2000s and things like that, I think people who were drawn to that are very much going to, feel satisfied and enjoy kind of what we're doing, specifically with the terror, because we do add in a lot of the kind of the obake, the yure, the bakemono, like these kind of Japanese type of folklore horror elements that have been such a great testament to just sort of Japanese culture itself. So if you're into that, I think you're gonna be a wonderful audience for this show.
Yeah, it's really stellar. And so working on this then for AMC, and then last year you were in Jean-Claude Van Johnson, which fans of this show know my undying passion and fandom for Jean-Claude Van Damme, which was through which was through Amazon Prime. So with the different way that television is being released, and with AMC now, with The Terror being a weekly broadcasted show, do you find, is there a different approach in during the making of it into the storytelling, or into just the vibe or the creation on set, or is it just something where that's more so of a distribution sort of handling and not so much storytelling?
I think, I think from a snapshot point of view, I think it's a little bit more of the latter, where it's a little bit more based on the business side of things and the distribution side of things. But that being said, again, Jean-Claude Van Johnson was actually also executive produced by Ridley Scott as well. So, like kind of similar umbrellas in terms of the production companies, totally different in the ways that they're obviously made. And with The Terror, it's funny because a show like this, where it becomes a lot heavier as you're watching it, like, is it something that you can binge? I mean, I'm not entirely sure. I actually binged the first season of The Terror, but through increments. Like, I couldn't just sit through 4 episodes and blast through in a single day because it's pretty heavy. But something like Jean-Claude Van Johnson, it's just so fun, and you can just kind of put it on. And I think it's one of those shows that you can very much easily do that type of binge. So, I think it's very dependent on the type of show itself. But in terms of the production and kind of how we made it, I mean, we had a blast on set both times, between Jean-Claude Van Johnson and The Terror. Like, the one thing that I would notice that was very different with The Terror, obviously, was just simply from the representation point of view of the first time I kind of walked into the trailer. It was sort of the first time that I had ever seen this feeling of everybody that was in the makeup chair was indeed of, Japanese descent, of an Asian descent. And you usually just don't see that in a very high budgeted type of production. So I think that kind of brought a really great energy to everything. Like, we all kind of brought it in together. And it was a family more than anything else. And we're very, very excited to just show the fruits of our labor at this point.
Nice. So being on set for something like you mentioned, a show like The Terror, that to watch it, and I adored it, but it's very visceral. Like it can be, emotionally taking a lot out of you. When you're dealing with such a heavy subject matter, and, not just like some of the more grisly, violent elements, but just in terms of the interactions, the relationships, the atmosphere on set, then, just curious, is it kind of like the exact sort of inverse, where people are just really lighthearted to help balance that out and to help get through it?
Well, I think, like, to that point, actually, what's really fascinating was the first day on set for me, when I actually was able to enter the stage set of the actual camps. Like, they basically built sort of the interiors of the camps, and then they built the whole exteriors of it as well. And to actually walk through that space, I wanted to just have that time for myself. I took like about 30 minutes before I got called on the set, and I just kind of walked through it and just to feel it. And it's amazing because even in the second episode, where they actually shoot in, and it was shot in Vancouver, and they shot in the racetracks in Vancouver, and that was actually one of the holding locations for Canadian Japanese at that time during the war, before they were sent to internment camps themselves. And so even them filming it there was this energy that a lot of people, even the first AD that was there that day, his, I believe, relative, his grandfather was basically held in that holding area in one of those horse stalls, essentially. So to that, I think there was this kind of heaviness to it. Like, we all kind of knew that we wanted to respectfully take this project and do the due diligence and properly kind of give it its honor. So to that, I mean, I think I certainly took the time. I know other characters took the time. George Takei, who's a consultant on this and also a series regular on this, he himself was injured at the age of 5 years old, and he was basically sent to Tule Lake, which is one of the worst kind of prison camps that they held at that time. So he was a huge source material even for myself and my character, who I can't explain too much about, but like, he was very instrumental in just me talking to him about what he had to go through, what was going on at that time. And so, you know, it definitely came with it. But that being said, we found moments to have lightheartedness, to have the fun, and to stay, you know, as a family, because, you know, you're together for 5-some months. Got to make some good time out of it, right?
Definitely. In that same vein, how was it working with George Takei?
Awesome. He's just the sweetest guy. He is the sweetest man of all, I swear. And he's always open. He always wants to help out. He's always ready to kind of tell a story if you want to know about certain things that's going on. But he's just a true humanitarian. Like, he's always just trying to think about how to make people better. So to that point, I think he was just a great addition to the project. And, you know, I'm excited just to kind of have everybody see what's happened in the show and all the kind of consultation that he's provided with it, because it's very authentic, it's very real, and he's just a great guy. So
stellar. Well, thanks again so much for this. And The Terror is currently airing on AMC. Chris, so great to reconnect with you, man. Always great to talk to a fellow NY unicorn.
Anybody, feel free to follow me on Instagram at Chris Naoki Lee. And aside from that, I'm very excited I got to chat with you, Chaz. Like, it's been a minute since we got to go on the phone, so I'm very excited that we got to reconnect.
Yeah, me too. And I'll toss on top of that, he's a great Instagram follow, highly recommended. Like, I even say, you know, compared to like our classmates, you know, whether you're talking, you know, Stephanie or Mary Kate and Ashley, yours is probably an easily like the superior Instagram. It's top 5 dead or alive NYU class of 2008 Instagrams. So great to talk to you, man. Congrats again on the show.